All right, thank you all for having me here today. Kind of hard to follow. Voices, huh? So we'll kind of keep the theme of voices. This is not a small voice by Sonia Sanchez. This is not a small voice you hear. This is a large voice coming out of these cities. This is the voice of LaTanya, Khadijah, Shaniqua. This is the voice of Antoine, Daryl, Shaquille, running over waters, navigating the hallways of your schools, our schools, spilling out on the corners of our cities, and no epitaphs spill out of the river mouths. This is not a small love you hear. This is a large love, a passion for kissing and learning on its face. This is a love that crowns the feet with hands, that nourishes, conceives, fills the water, sails, mends the children, folds them inside our history, where they toast more than flesh, where they suck the bones of the alphabet and spit out closed vowels. This is a love colored with iron and lace. This is a love initial black genius. This is not a small voice you hear. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for welcoming to your space here today. I'd like to begin by not re-explaining what Juneteenth is or how it began. I imagine we Googled it or even watched a short video to refresh our memories, and that's perfectly fine. My connection to this holiday and historical landmark began in Pittsburgh, where I grew up. Every June, my parents would take me to the Point, or Point State Park. Anybody here from Pittsburgh? Well, the Point is where all the rivers converge. They call it a confluence. The Monongahela, Allegheny, and Ohio. Where the Pittsburgh Steelers play the Pirates. That's why you see a triangle. So down there every season, they would have a celebration. Vendors, food, music, and usually a local radio station. WAMO, W-A-M-O, Allegheny, Monongahela, and Ohio. It's not around anymore. Now we got Steve Harvey every morning. So sweltering afternoon every June, but no one cared as kids growing up in the 80s. There was no school, tons of food, vendors. I was around the age of 8 to 12, and I had no idea that it had a connection with the city of Galveston. I knew of its marking of the freedom of enslaved families, but was not familiar with the sad scenario of late communication of the Emancipation Proclamation. To me, in the late 80s, it was just another holiday for black people and a time to not be in school, to keep it real. I share that story to be a little vulnerable with you, show a little humility, as I do with my wife and at times my students at Montevallo. I, like each person in this room, was not born with absolute knowledge and enjoyment of black history and holiday celebrations, notable people, and historical content. We grow into it from experience, someone encouraging us, taking classes, undergrad, graduate, or even in high school. We have some fantastic teachers here today. I remember my mom teaching me Habari Gani, or what's the news in Swahili, when I was in elementary school. She spoke of how she learned a little Swahili in school during the Civil Rights Movement. My dad strongly encouraged me to do a book report on Malcolm X in 6th grade. Yeah, he kind of forced me to do a book report on Malcolm X in 6th grade. It wasn't an option. I remember my mom telling me she was so heartbroken that the day my dad went out, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, because she was afraid that he wouldn't come back, or he would come back hurt from rioting and hanging out in the streets in anger. Now you may ask, what does this have to do with Juneteenth? Well, I remember how I celebrated this holiday, or marking the emancipation, with my family in Pittsburgh back in the 1980s, reflected on my ignorance of its history, and further with memories of who provided me with an appreciation for black pride, accomplishment, grief, and resilience. My mom and dad shortened my learning curve, but there was a learning curve. So this is what I would like to do with you. As I share my connection with Juneteenth with you today, I charge you to do the same, but with brief, powerful moments and gestures a charge of let's do something. Let's think, let's reflect, and let's continue this every holiday. And to be honest, you all know how holidays are. In Black 360, we should do it all throughout the year because we're all humans and not just all Black Americans. Whose voice did you bring to today's event? And whose will you take with you during holidays that allow us to reflect on our freedoms? Was it your sorority sister who taught you what Kwanzaa meant? Were you fortunate enough to have a teacher explain something that was beyond the social studies textbooks or the English literature that you're exposed to in our districts? Did a friend of a different race take up for you when you were defending the right for life of Sandra Bland, Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, or George Floyd? If you're Catholic, were you invited to a mosque or synagogue by a colleague to enjoy an eye-opening experience of something different? Hear that one person in the room that stood by your argument that Lil Nas X, Beyonce, and Shabuzi is actually qualified legit country music. Whose voice do you still hear or face do you see to this day? If these voices that we carry with us, sometimes unknowingly, until we get to the chance to reflect upon them. So carry that voice with you until you can reflect upon them. That is why this holiday is special to me and some of you. But sometimes the voices we bring with us to these spaces and times are just as important as the holiday itself. Thank you all very much. Beautiful space. Beautiful